All right, thank you everyone for joining us today as we talk through how to segment and activate your customer 360 data platform. My name is Nick Zeke Lopez. I'm there on the left, and I'm the Director of Product Strategy here at MessageGears. Today, I'll be joined with our partners at Havas Helia to talk through how to effectively use your data and send it to multiple channels. Joining me today is Shay Young, Managing Director. Shay, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, Shay Young, Managing Director for Havas Helia for all things data, MarTech, and privacy.
And with us is Ward.
Yeah, Ward Thomas, the Director of Data Science at Havas Helia.
So tell us a little about your company, guys.
Sure. Havas Helia, we've been around for, about 30 years now, changed names a few times, but Havas Helia is a customer engagement. We're part of the Havas Creative Network, which is worldwide, but we sit in the Baltimore office, which is our flagship office, and we have other offices within Richmond, Chicago, and New York. If you want to take away one thing about what we do at Havas, it's our mission, which is to deliver innovative data-backed marketing solutions that drive meaningful connections.
I'll tell you a little bit about MessageGears. MessageGears is the only customer marketing platform that connects directly to your data. Headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, we exist to break down the barriers that keep marketers from effectively using their data and communicating their brand. At MessageGears, we have 3 different products: segment, message, and engage. Today, we'll be talking about the segmentation piece to understand your customer base and effectively communicate them to many different platforms. So, what are we doing today? Shay, could you walk us through a little bit of why we're together and what we're talking through?
Sure. I want to talk about the segment piece and how that's really helped us with our teams and our clients using Smart Design, which is our test and learn platform, but to really use that in multiple channels. And it's really about optimizing across many channels, and then really how MessageGears can really help us with the segment tool quickly and securely create and manage treatments and control audiences. Now, these are very important, having treatments and within different platforms. But what we're going to go over today is really how simple it is to use the segmentation grid and go through that to distribute to those different partners.
Excellent. So I think we all know the idea of what would be ideal and why everybody always wants to communicate with the right recipient on the right channel at the right time. Tell me a little bit about what the opportunity there, but and moreover, why is that difficult?
Sure. I mean, in this instance, we're talking about segments sitting over top of a customer 360. Just a little bit on that for a second. It's really about AdTech and MarTech converging and really trying to have that central repository for your consumer so you can activate with them in all channels everywhere. Really, the barrier comes in play is that once a 360 gets developed, it's usually owned by the client. And when it's owned by the client, then it has client IT infrastructure. And that becomes difficult when your marketing partners are outside of your agency. So if you have people sitting over in Facebook, you have people sitting in Google, and then maybe a direct mail partner, it's really hard to work with the IT teams to distribute those audience in a timely fashion in the right format. So on the screen here, you can see some of the barriers that we run into. Is like segmentation of customers is not easy. Our analysts and our data teams, it's really easy, but trying to communicate that to the IT department is not as easy to try to get that across. Every partner needs different kinds of data. So, it could be different formats, from JSON to XML to flat files. And then you have like post-campaign data difficulties. So when those files get created on the back end, you will need to analyze those. So it's really about storing and keeping that together.
That's absolutely true. Before we get into actually segmenting that data, Ward, could you tell me a little bit about what Smart Design is and how, Havas Helia tackles this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Smart Design is our proprietary experimental design methodology that promotes a cycle of continuous improvement in marketing campaign performance. So as you can see on the left, the virtuous cycle begins at the top with identifying what variables we want to test, defining the KPI or the performance metric that will be used to determine our success, generating experimental designs, whether they be A/B or more complex MVT or multivariate tests, then actually going to market and conducting the test and analyzing the results. And then having established a winner from that test cycle, we return to the top and design the next test, leveraging what we've learned to improve results over time.
And that's why we believe that MessageGears segment is such a great fit for that kind of methodology, because of what that last part that you mentioned, that iterative design, the ability to connect directly to data, so to always work from live data, not have to copy it to another area, not have to work with several different teams to prepare data for different vendors. The ease of use of that, the speed to market, and then the ability to schedule that going to whatever partner you're going to feeds into that iterative design in as much as we can. So on the smart design discussion, could you tell me a little bit of what we're going to be doing today and what the channel test is that we'll be covering?
Sure. Yeah. So in designing this test, we're looking to identify the most effective combination of 3 different marketing channels: direct mail, email, and targeted social display. So here we've created a test matrix of all channel combinations of the 3. Whether you're getting just one of those treatments, a pair, or all 3 of the treatments in the top 7 cells, along with a control group in cell 8 that would receive none of these marketing treatments that we can use as a benchmark. In designing a test like this, we can calculate the required sample sizes to ensure that we get statistically valid results on the back end, and establish a KPI that can be universally measured across all the channels that are involved in the test, such as sales per customer contacted, that will determine our ultimate success for the test result.
Excellent. So, and I see our 8 cells here. As I go forward in the demo, I'm going to refer to them by names like that. I feel that the number was easier than the treatment. But let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about how MessageGears segment combines to make this happen. So I'm now in the MessageGears platform under our blueprints. What we're seeing here is our ability to connect directly to a data set. This could be on-premise or behind a firewall. And I just want to show you in this one, we're connected to a BigQuery data set here. But MessageGears can connect to literally any kind of brand's on-premise data. So that could be Redshift, Snowflake, MySQL, Azure. And you can see here, I've got our little, I would say table finder here, where we're working with our City and Glory furniture brand today. And you can see all of our different tables. I'll be working from our customer all table. And you can see all of the various columns here. Again, this is live data. So as soon as this updates, this will update in my screen as well. You can see that I've got a fairly simple select statement here. And I've gone ahead as the data person, I'll be playing both parts today, gone ahead and selected that data and mapped it to be able to use in a drag and drop segmentation. If I take a look here at what kind of data that I'll be using, this is fairly basic profile data that a brand might have. You know, your email address, your first name and your last name, a little bit about you, and then something about the days since purchase. We're going to use your purchase recency to decide who should be in the channel test today. So as we go forward into the blueprint, you can see we start with our starting population of 250,000 members. What I want to do first is I want to segment those members to people that have purchased. So this is going to take everybody that has purchased that'll ultimately be part of our channel test today. What I can then do is drag and drop to different kinds of segments of people that have purchased. So for instance, people that have purchased in the last 1 day. We may not want to market to them since the purchase recency could cause brand fatigue if we began reaching out immediately after the purchase. So I can say days since purchased is less than or equal to 1, and I've created my 1 day segment. I can do this for different time grains and different actual variables within my data to be able to segment my data a little bit and get a better idea of who my users are and how many are in each group. So I'll call the 1 month group people that have purchased in the last 30 days, and I'll add a final segment of all time where people have purchased ever. So I'll say days since purchased is greater than 0. So what I just want to show in this example as I add this to the blueprint and save and then give it a count, what I'm doing is I'm counting this live data and running through what you could think of as a rules engine that I've been able to save here in my, what I would say in the drag and drop interface. So what I've got here is a mutually exclusive set of data. So from left to right, it's going to filter out all of the rules that I've put on it, which are the segments that I've created. And then it's going to, within within the blueprint here, then filter down, top down. So it's going to find all the people that have bought in the last day, then the last month, and then all time. So if I go ahead and refresh this page here, you can see that of my 250,000 total users, 125,000 of them have purchased, 124,000 haven't. And then if I click into here, I actually get the individual counts for people that have been in each segment. So, 431 people purchased from my brand in the last day, 8.2 thousand in the last month, and 116,000 all time. So I can then use this data to, if I want to, filter down to say, you know what, I only want to filter the people that have purchased in the last month and all time. And those are what I will call my, marketable audience, people that will go into today's channel test. If I add that to the blueprint, I can see now that I've just segmented again. So I've got my marketable audience and everything else. I can call it my, non-marketable audience. What I've done here, before we even get into the channel test, is segment my audience to a specific selection of people using drag and drop, not needing to know any SQL, not needing to know anything about the data, just using what has been set up for me. Getting into the channel test that Ward was describing, remember we had those 8 cells. What we want to do there is create 8 different randomized groups of our recipients. Now, Ward, could you touch on why it's so important to have randomized groups here and not have any, repeated people or specificity there?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, whenever you do a test, you want to isolate the impact of the variables that you're measuring. In our case, the different channel combinations and how they influence sales performance. And so it's just essential to avoid introducing any potential bias into that test, such as the customers in different cells being inherently different, maybe in terms of their past purchase behavior, their demographics. So if these biases were to exist in a test, then they could end up being the underlying true drivers behind any differences you observe in test cell results. And that would invalidate any potential channel learnings. So we want to ensure randomization to avoid that at all costs.
Something that we have added on the MessageGears side of the segment is the guarantee of randomness within our blueprint here. So not only is it random, but if I click count here and my users flow down through the top of my starting population, you can see here that now, remember, about 400 people bought from our brand yesterday. Those have now been filtered out of our marketable audience, which has been split into 8 fairly equal, because it's mutually exclusive, boxes. Now, what's important is, as a marketer, I have a complete understanding of how many people will be in this segment, so I know who I'll be reaching out to. But to Ward's point, it's also really important that I know that if I recounted, I would get a different random sample each time. So you can see the count is finished. I got the same number of people in each box. We've got our 7 cells that we discussed and our holdout group as well. So this is really where we have segmented our audience. And if we wanted to, we could then, for other marketing purposes, we could split or filter on different things. Our people that have never bought from us, say that we wanted to reach out to them, we could come up with a 50-50 A/B split if we wanted to, and save that there. I can continue iterating on this through my blueprint as much as I need to in this drag and drop format. Now, before I leave this screen, I'm going to talk on, if you remember the channel test, each one of these segments is going to get a different treatment, meaning it's going to be sent to a different combination of vendors or users. Shay, can you talk to me about what this does? You had mentioned being able to kind of skip the IT hassle earlier. Can you talk a little bit about how this is doing that and what this means to you?
Yeah, no, this canvas here in the segment tool itself really creates that bridge between IT and marketing, right? So when the 360 database is created and it's maintained for security, it really separates the data science team from the data, right? This allows a bridge, right? Like a common platform we can go into, as well as the marketing teams on the client side, to really get a full visual of what's happening. And that's important because, as you said, this is in real time. So let's say I asked the team to give me 8 audiences today. We analyze them tomorrow. Maybe those 400 turn into 2,000. Now all my groups are separated, right? The counts have changed over from losing a couple of days. So that's one. The second would be, formatting, right? Now we have all these audiences and they're great, but let's say these are all different channels. Right now we're going to 3, but there could be up to 10 different channels to market to. Each of those channels would have their own type of platform to receive the data. They would have their own encryption policies, as well as different columns that are needed. And that's what's great about this tool, is that you have actually taken a lot of the guesswork out of that for us, as far as mapping those, common things that we contribute to, such as like email platforms or to LiveRamp or to Facebook, for example.
Excellent. So let's get into that actually.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that. So I'm actually going to go to our external campaign segment here and just create and show how easy it is to then send to those third parties. So I'll call this my 360 activation campaign. And in our world, an external campaign is really a campaign that is just letting the user know this is going to leave the MessageGears system. This is going to leave your data. This is going to then extract it and send to a place, a third party that you had mentioned. Remember, we had our 360 blueprint, and all I need to do is plug that into our audience here. And the way I can select different test cells for treatments is I'm actually able to go directly into that blueprint. Now, this is the blueprint that I just created. I can then select specific cells that I want treatments on. So for instance, if I'm going to send a campaign for email, I can then select 1, 3, and 5 and select them to my email provider. If I wanted to unselect all and then have only 2 and 4 for this one, it just allows me to select any group that I want. Using our audience reporting feature, it also then lets me select everybody and say, on this day, I want to persist what groups these people were in, so I can understand over time how they're moving throughout the customer journey. So I'm just going to go ahead and select, let's say 1 and 2 here. And if I go back to settings and I click count on our main page here, it should return to me the number of combined users in my first and second segment. That is, and there we go, that's 32,000 people. What this is telling me is right now, I'm going to be sending to any destination 32,000 of my users, always keeping me in line. Now, just to talk through the destinations we have, what we tried to do in Segment is make it so that it was as easy for the marketer to then send that data outside of their environment if they needed to as possible. So we have integrated with Airship. We have basic SFTP destinations for things like, Shay, you had mentioned direct mail uses a lot of SFTP. We have S3, Telium. I'll go ahead and just, as an example, I'll bring up Facebook. And we see descriptions and data formats here. What we've done is for this explicit, and I can actually map the different columns that correspond to a Facebook destination here. But if let's say I said I just want an SFTP, or if I just wanted to send to, let's say, an Airship tag destination, I'm going to get different options. What this means is that for each of these destinations, what MessageGears is doing is allowing you to put, as the marketer, to input what you need to do. And then also we're going to be preparing that data for the destination. For instance, I think, Shay, what is it for Facebook? I forget, how does the data need to be imported? Do you remember?
I mean, there's multiple ways. You can do it through an API, which is, of course, is complex. You can do like an SFTP upload to your audience and convert, or they actually have a direct website where you actually grab the file off your desktop and then have to do the mappings manually.
That's right.
Which can be cumbersome for a marketer.
It can be cumbersome for a marketer. I mean, even if you're a data engineer and you got 20 things to do, we've seen organizations where that's difficult. And quite frankly, a lot of these destinations require data to be hashed on sending it to a customer, and or encrypted, GPG encryption, compression. We handle all of that for the user. And then just to point this out, that if I wanted to recurring send this, maybe my channel test is going to go over a significant amount of time, I could do that here in the segment UI as well. So now that I've segmented my customer base visually. I've activated them by sending them to my destination. In this case, it could have been anyone, and we'll say it's Airship, or if I wanted to, it could be Facebook. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to turn it back over and see what happens when the data gets there, and what do we want to do. So switching back to our presentation here, really when that data lands in its, in this case, Facebook, in its destination. Shay, can you tell me a little bit about what the user sees and what we do?
Sure. I mean, first of all, it's instantaneous, right? The data comes over automatically. The issue with Facebook, for anybody on the phone who uses that, you know that it will take Facebook a while to actually map those different audiences to the actual cookies and for the different profiles. But once that actually does replicate in the system, and then you actually go into the audience viewer, you'll see in your custom audiences, you know, exactly how you name the segments, you know, treatment, test, codes 1 through 8, whatever you had set up will actually distribute into that database. And so you as an ad tech person, right, so you're managing Facebook, you don't have to worry about the audiences. You didn't have to worry about any of the mapping. You really just go to the audience selector and then grab your inclusion audience that you just mapped over for your campaign. Secondarily, exclusions can be added as well, like for your control group. So you can actually put those in there too. What I'm not going to go through today, obviously, is how to build a Facebook campaign. But just know that, you know, that is an everyday in and out job for any campaign management. Facebook, where they set up the campaign, the advertisement, your assets, then they'll go through like their budget setup and then distribute. But really what's key is how quickly they can actually get to these audiences, right? They don't have to learn a new job, right? They just go in and select who they're going to market to and move on.
So then moving forward past that, how do you know, we're not going to see anything today, but can you tell me a little bit about then collecting data from that and how we know people interacted?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, Facebook is a walled garden, right? So everything that happens within Facebook is only in Facebook. So you can't really distribute out any data on a person level, which is fine. I mean, there's ways to work around, and you can put your events in. And as you can see here, they actually have reporting tools that can help you out for your campaign, right? So you can see within that campaign itself, you know, how many impressions did you receive? How many clicks did you get? What was your reach? You can actually see your cost. That all the way down the line to ROI if you actually have all your offline events mapped into here. What you can't see is how it interacts with other channels, which is what Ward's going to walk you guys through on the next slide.
You know, I think you teed him up. Ward, could you tell me a little bit about how you do that and some of the considerations you go into when doing that analysis through Smart Design?
Sure. Yeah. So post-campaign, we can analyze results to measure the effectiveness of each channel combination in driving the KPI we established, which was sales per recipient or sales per customer. So here we're displaying the same test matrix that we showed a few slides back, with 4 additional columns added to the right. Those are sales per recipient, our KPI, cost per recipient, which reflects the cost of reach through the channel mix that's prescribed by each test cell. And that gives us a net sales value per recipient when we subtract those two. And then finally, the incremental net sales per recipient is really our bottom line financially characterized metric. It subtracts the control group performance from the 7 treatment test cells, 1 through 7, and really represents that bottom line. So we look at it financially because we can't measure engagement across all the channels in the same way. We look at sales as really that bottom line that is a common denominator across all the channel combinations, and focus on that. And in addition to the financial analysis, there would be a statistical analysis too to verify the stability in the sales per recipient values we're seeing here based on the sample sizes we have.
So in this example, we ran through some, you know, obviously not totally realistic, but I think directional results. Can you tell me what we would have seen here and what you typically see when analyzing these kind of multi-channel smart designs?
Yeah, these are, I think, representative results of the types of channel tests that we've done. The different the winners that come out in different tests vary by our client, by industry, and by application. But in this example, looking at the sales results, we've highlighted some things here that we wanted to point out. And we see that the top performing channel combination in this case was the fourth cell, which was direct mail and email. And that combination generated an incremental net sales per recipient in the far right column of 30 cents, which is the highest performer. We saw only one of the test cells, which was social only. Although it drove sales per recipient above control, it didn't sufficiently outperform the control to offset the cost of reach in that case. So it ended up being just slightly negative on that bottom line metric. And then it's also interesting to note, and this happens sometimes, that in cell 7, where we had all channels working in combination, we got the highest sales per recipient of $1.25. But because the cost of reach when combining those three channels was also the highest, and by a little bit more, it wasn't enough to offset that cost of reach to make it the top performer on our bottom line metric. It missed it by 5 cents. So it's important to again, financially characterize the results that you're getting, statistically validate them, and move forward with the most profitable channel combination.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. We have a few takeaways here as we've reached the end of the analysis. I think that what you touched on was having that complete view of your customer is kind of the end all be all here. It's what allowed us to kind of go into this test and allowed us to have that most optimized contact view for all of our recipients. And the lack of that, not only ability to have all of your data, but the lack of a straightforward, we'll say easy way to then send that data to many different platforms is currently limiting marketers. And we can take the entirely creative approach of the kind of experience we would like to create for recipients. But as Ward, as you illustrated, the amount of revenue that could be gained, the amount of profit that could then be generated by looking at the right combination of channel and content and recipient is really going to drive the bottom line. Before we wrap up, for any questions, do you guys have anything else to add?
No, nothing really to add on that, except for just from that grid that Ward was showing, is that segment, the power of segment is really speed to market, right? And it's about how quickly my data scientist can actually come up with, like, here's a test scenario for you to actually grow, and then to activate on that, right? So this could be a test that could be in a pipeline that would be 3 months to 6 months down the road, but segment allows, like, our data science team to actually get into that system, work on the test plans, and distribute quickly, so that we can actually activate and then optimize going forward. Like Ward said, that might be the optimal mix right now as far as DM and EM. We would not say throw out social, for example, but we would optimize based on those incremental sales to make sure that you are putting your right money to the right place.
That makes sense. And we're actually at the bottom of the hour here, so we're going to go quick to the questions. I've got one here. How would you marry the interactions you see from social and ad channels with other marketing channels like email? So I think that there is hinting at, we've got the different channels here with the yes, yes, no. How do you guys really compare an email view versus a social view, then going on to a purchase? Is it so much as eyeballs on content, or are there different layers of interaction there?
Yeah, I mean, so in this scenario here, we're really taking it back to the audience level, right? So we're going to work on those different segments and tests. And so what you're doing is, what I think the person is probably asking the question is really talking about, like, attribution, right? If you had like a DMP and you're trying to see, like, how many touches were happening down the line, that's great when you're in the digital world, but really the issue comes into, like, when you start taking offline channels. Like, let's say it's out of home. You have like you have billboards somewhere, right, that a person's seeing, as well as these other interactions. And so really the only commonality that's going to come there is the audience, like who you're serving or who's seeing the message, and then sales, right, like the direct sales to that consumer. So that's how we marry them together. We really get to the sales aspect and the consumer, so that we can actually have a common ground, because it's very difficult, almost impossible to look at impressions, right, versus like an email click through and open, right? They're not the same.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ward. Did you
Yeah, I
have
was
anything
just
to add to
going
the analysis?
just going to say that I think that's part of the power of being able to onboard first-party data into social platforms to, to really be able to attribute sales back to those who are exposed to the ads. You don't necessarily get a perfect match in uploading to a platform like Facebook, but we know who was prescribed to receive it, and we'd expect the cells that involve social to have a similar match rate across them given the randomization, so we can fairly test.
And then just to put a cap on what you guys were saying, that is really what MessageGears wants to do as a company. We exist to allow to tap into that entire view of the data, whether it's then going to social or using MessageGears messaging, plugging that data right back into that data warehouse could then give a pretty easy combined view. So it is now a little bit past 2:30, and I think we have hit the end of the time for the webinar. Thank you so much to everybody who came in today, and thank you very much, Shay and Ward, for helping me take a look at what is possible to do by segmenting and activating data. Everybody have a great day, and look forward to seeing what we can do in the future.